If you ever want an excuse to hate on Falcons, just think of Falcons as budget but way more expensive 2024 G2, because Niko is Niko, of course, and Tesses is just worse Malbs, and Dexter is like half melted plastic toy Monacy, and Kixen is better than Snacks, but Magisk is also probably better than Hunter. But if you could imagine replacing Hunter with Heavy God, and then you have 2024 G2, but everyone on the roster is really good except for Snacks, then you understand what we could have had. Although, to be fair, Hunter getting kicked probably wasn't in the cards. I say that to begin the video discussing Niko being on another team but having the same exact problem, which is that pretty much 80% of the games he is the best player in the server, and once in a while he has a bad game, and when he has a bad game, there's almost no chance they actually win. Now, I want to be clear here. First of all, Niko's not a choker. If you think Niko's a choker, you're just wrong. But it's not a coincidence, okay? If you had 5 Nikos on a roster, all 5 of them couldn't play the same way. And so when Niko has a bad game, it's notably going to be harder for his team to win as compared to if someone like Kixan has a bad game, because they're not putting the resources into Kixan. And not only that, Niko plays a pretty aggressive style. Niko goes for a lot of opening duels. And I'm not saying that Niko is the problem or anything, obviously. It's just that sometimes you get the wrong idea if you just look at the scoreboard, where it's like, Niko can't just have a bad game and get carried. Look at the other players on the roster. They have bad games and get carried all the time. It's not one-to-one like that. That's not quite how it works. Even though, realistically, there's only one rifler in the world I think I would replace Niko with, which is Donk. Otherwise, Niko is the most consistent and just most effective rifler. And not only that, but he does a lot more entrying. He does a lot more opening kills than people really think. The other end of the spectrum of what people think about Niko is, well, he just plays all the star roles. That just makes everything easy. Niko it's a little bit harder than that, but okay. I want to watch this game mostly from his POV. He plays the, CTA rotator role. That's okay. He had that kill. Dexter stole it. I give him credit for that one. Dexter stole that one. But yeah, this is the 2-2 match against Eternal Fire. In PGL Cluj, they actually beat Eternal Fire in the playoffs. And, realistically, if this is the playoffs, we're going to be honest, they probably win again. But because it's the group stages, Eternal Fire just so happens to be probably a top 4 team in the world. I mean, they're not they're not Na'Vi. What are the teams? They're not Na'Vi, Vitality, or Spirit, but not many teams better than them other than that. But there we had, what do we even say about that round? So Niko's jiggling towards short. His team loses long, and not only do they lose long, but they lose a player in long, and his team is rotating over. Niko wants to head over and support, but he actually also needs to control towards short. And once he dies, the round is basically unsalvageable for his team. The question is what most players do in that situation. I think a lot of players would have stuck a little bit closer to Cat, maybe moved over, thrown a flash, and then stuck around on short for a little bit longer. That doesn't seem like a completely unreasonable play he made there, given that he generally is going to be winning that duel the majority of the time. Once he dies, the round is basically unsavable. So, starting out 4-1 down, not the best thing in the world, but it doesn't really matter too much. Niko helps support towards the long control early. Eternal Fire simply aren't there. And then they end up in a kind of a 3B. You have the one player close towards middle, but, that's more of a B side player. So you really just have Niko and Kixan towards A, and his team on the other side of the map gets double entried by Wakadia. Now Niko can go for a bit of a rotate over, and maybe Tesses can make something happen, but the ability for Eternal Fire to just know that rotate has to be coming, and they lock it down perfectly, right? You have the kills on B. Eternal Fire probably expected that B was actually empty, or maybe there's one player. That the CTs have to be rotating in that direction. They have to get something done, and you can just post up and wait for it. And there's really no winning for Niko, right? Like, what's he going to do? Is he going to not go? Is he not going to not rotate over? Not really beneficial. But if he does rotate over, he has to hope that someone screws up, more or less. But here, Kixan, Zeus style, keeping the M4 over Niko, but he actually picks up a 2K and he does 98 damage to Major. So maybe Zeus was right, is what we're learning here. Niko keeping the Deagle. We even have Dexter with the AWP that actually gets into the right position, hits a nice shot. So you've got a 3v2. absolutely winnable round, especially because Major's on 2 health, and they've got the double up, right? Both fighting from middle, and you've got the flank actually as well. Tez's, he gets the 1, then he swings for the 2nd, but there's no possibility for trade. So it does turn it into like a clean 1v2. And Woxic has a reasonable chance here. Not only that, I was going to say the AK isn't retrievable. It actually is completely retrievable, and they should win anyways. Yeah, Nico's going to grab the kill. Not the end of the world. 5-2, and they pick up a couple AKs, or 1 AK, and they get the op back, so they're still feeling pretty good. But Eternal Fire just going to hammer out long, and this time around, Wicadia insta-gibs Niko. The lucky or bad police is out here in full force, and I don't know if that's unlucky, but I don't think it's necessarily bad either. Although this from Kixan is just kind of bad. Oh god. And Niko was watching, and you could see Niko get tilted after that just happened. Oh, I was watching it on stream. Oh my. Yeah, I mean, Niko dying there to the spam, it's not unlucky. It's unlucky that he got insta-gived, right? Usually if they spam back, they might hit you for a little bit. People spam that smoke all the time. It's not abnormal to spam that smoke. You usually don't get shot back straight in the head in the first 2 bullets, right? So can't really blame Niko for that one. And the retake on A, Niko's just throwing the utility. Flashes actually work perfectly to partially blind Major, open up the play through the smoke, and Niko gets 1 kill. But I think he ends this game with about 5 kills. I think he might only get like 1 or 2 more kills after where he's at right now. So things seem to go downhill from here if we are to be anticipating the outcome. But this should be a pretty easy round. I mean, they're fighting against pistols. Xantarez has an AK, but that's kind of meaningless. Niko nades out the smoke, but Tezes with the 4K hold. And Tezes, I said Tezes is like worse Malbs. Tezes has had some insane pop-offs, and there's like a couple of series that if you watch them, he looks like the best entry fragger of all time. Like just unbelievable gameplay. But I think, would I take Malbs over Tez? I think I would take Malbs over Tezes right now in that role. I think I would probably do it. Tezes isn't much worse, but I think Tezes is a little bit worse. Niko, standard play on towards short. One of the things is he's not getting a lot of utility damage done. His team's not really giving him extra nades in spawn. They don't really have a lot of money to like cycle nades. Some teams do that, and it helps a lot. You just kind of chunk down those players. I mean, they gave him a little bit of extra utility, but still not the... So Kixan's gonna throw a flash. Niko's just early. Niko's just early. Yeah, Niko just peeks that early. Yeah, that was just odd. That flash landed super deep, which maybe it needs to land that deep to catch people looking kind of towards Goose. Maybe that's the point. But because of that, Niko's like back turned in the most awkward way possible. And then he's just a little bit early. He doesn't just expect them to be as far forward as they are. And he just ends up dying. And I mean, that's a pretty big round to lose too, because it would be, I mean, they win that round at 6-5, and it really is his job to be at least getting 1 or 2 or delaying them, which he did neither. I mean, he did the molly, but 2 players got out in front of it, and then they immediately killed him. So he didn't really delay them. He didn't really get any damage done. He didn't get any kills. I mean, 6-6 would have potentially been on the cards otherwise. Instead, you're most likely looking at 7-5. Obviously, Eternal Fire heading towards B. So Niko's kind of, I mean, when you get smoked off in this situation, what are you going to do, right? You've got to go for it, but there's not much hope to get anything done. I mean, he probably could have got that kill, but that's not going to be a round win regardless. And then into second half, I don't think things go a whole lot better. Niko is, I mean, in general, he's going to be in the quote-unquote high fragging or star player positions, right? Short on Dust 2 is one of them, although it's a little bit more, other than long anchor and like the Deady B anchor, those are, I think, the other 2 roles are both pretty reasonable. On T side, he's one of the main lower defaulters. And one of the things about Niko is because he has a really good understanding of the game, obviously, and because he's been around so long, he can really push the edges in terms of the like what space he can take without wasting utility or without wasting time. He can get very aggressive control very early on in a lot of rounds, which is part of what makes him so valuable. along with his like mid-round calling, CT calling, and everything else he adds to the adds to the formula. But just a play up short, pretty effective. Niko doesn't even see anybody. I mean, he sees Major, but he's dead before he can even click. And at this point, I mean, this is not a bonus round because they did enough economic damage, I guess. Or how is this not a bonus round? I guess it's kind of a bonus round because Xantarez has, I mean, Xantarez doesn't have enough to buy, but if we look at the bomb explode, it's not quite a bonus round. So I guess they just full bought up utility. Maybe they had that op. Yeah, they did have the op actually previously bought. So surprised it didn't manage to be a bonus round. But regardless, Niko went lower. This is a really solid flash, by the way, if you've never seen it. It's not that much of a lineup. It goes over the opponent's scope and then drops down into their view. So it's really hard for an opper to dodge. That's a nice molly as well. Lands right side of the door. And you'll get a lot of kills if you do that spam when you throw that molly in pugs, because people will be sitting in that corner non-stop. And as soon as you throw that molly, they're going to start running away and you just spam them as they're running away. Really effective play. They regroup towards B. I mean, he's not really in too many positions to make engagements. And he's first out with 28 HP, which is totally understandable. It's just a shame. I mean, I'm not going to blame him for jumping around the corner. It's a shame, though, because if he doesn't jump around that corner, he at least has a chance to kill Jota, right? Maybe he doesn't get the kill. It's Niko. He probably gets the kill. But I think that's relatively normal, right? Like, you got 28 health. You're just jumping around the corner, trying to get out far as possible to get the information before you die, because you're literally a one bullet kill. But manages to not die to the saved op from Woxic. He spots it out, keeps himself safe, doesn't end up dying, which is all you can really ask him for. Team hits B. Niko gets himself a nice anti-eco frag, and is he gonna hunt? Yeah, I mean, hunting here makes a lot of sense if they know that there's an M4. Sometimes you hunt the op and you give the second player a rifle instead of, you know, if you had a pistol, the op kills you and then they pick up your gun, so you can be a little tentative about that. But 10-7, come back in full force. Niko tossing flashes for his teammates to go out long. Those are the standard flashes you want to be throwing. By the way, the timing, if you're ever wondering, to throw the first flash, people throw it way too early, even in higher level pugs somehow. It's basically when your first player gets just inside of like the crack of those doors, you throw the first flash, because if you throw it like super early, it doesn't necessarily do anything. Although if you're playing really, really bad players, if you throw the super deep flash over long early that sucks and nobody throws, if you throw that and you're playing really noob players, they will fail to throw their long doors volley. It's just really funny, but it's not supposed to work. It's not supposed to work. But this is just, I don't know. This one isn't really on Niko either. I mean, this is a really interesting play from Eternal Fire. They see that smoke down. I don't think they threw that smoke. I think Falcons threw that smoke to get safely into pit. Is that what happened? Yeah, Falcons throw that smoke. They knew this was coming. They knew this is this is planning. They knew this was coming. Falcons throw that to get into pit. There's no way they just lined this up out of nowhere. And Xantarez just comes around the corner, gets 3 kills. That's actually a wicked play from Eternal Fire. There's no way that's an accident, though. That doesn't. Nobody calls that in the mid game. That would be like the best mid game call in history, but that's actually wicked because I've used that smoke before, although I don't usually use it like that deep on the corner. The problem if you use it further forward though is you have no ability to get in front of it and you have to walk around it, which actually makes other problems. Usually, I mean, optimally you want to use the original corner smoke and then get in a pit off of that smoke, right? But the timing often doesn't work out. I mean, to be honest, the majority of this game really isn't on him. It's kind of just Eternal Fire has had some really nice plays. He's been rotating into lost bomb sites, but when it has been up to Niko to get things done, he hasn't delivered to quite the same degree that you'd hope. And I notice he hasn't really been going for a lot of the aggressive plays that I feel like I know Niko for. A lot of this EPL event, I saw Niko going for very aggressive plays off of short, and maybe it's just a natural progression that he was going for those in some of the previous matches, and so he plays a little bit more passive in this one, so his opponents can't hard counter-strat him. But at the same time, he's just not really created any openings or any opportunities for himself to play outside of the system, I guess you could say, where it's like, basically, it's the same criticism to some extent that people give Zywoo, which is like, he's not going to take over a game. I don't agree with that. But he's not going to do the simple, like, just run it down, like, and just prove basically your team either wins by your hand or they lose because you're going to do some insane shit. And ZywOo will just play inside of the system. That kind of feels like what Niko's doing here, which he doesn't normally feel like he does. And that suggests to me that he knows that he's just not on his A game right now. So he's just not trying to give up any opportunities or any major openings, give any aim duels that he doesn't feel like he's likely to win, which is totally reasonable. It is something that can also lead to problems when the rest of your team just isn't doing that well. If you want to learn about this, you can look up Elige on DDK's podcast, where Elige talked about the A, B, and C game. A lot of pros have talked about this, but it's become more and more popularized as time has gone on, which is the idea that you're not going to be on your A game every single day. Some days you're going to have an off day, some days, and it's going to be a B game. And once in a while, you're going to have a day where it's your C game, and you're just playing like ass. And the idea, and Device talked about this a long time ago, he said, you're not going to get 100% every day of your skill level, basically. But the key is to get, if you are only at 80%, if you're only feeling 80%, you want to get 100% out of that 80%. And that's the idea of the A, B, and C game. A lot of people and most players in PUGs do this. They optimize the hell out of their A game, and it's like they play as if their aim and their gameplay is going to be on point perfect every day. And then if they have a day where it's a B game day, they're just not bringing their A game, they're just not doing their best, then they're just going to do the same exact plays, and they're just going to int, and they're just going to go 0-30, and it's just going to be game over, right? At a higher level, at the pro level, players are thinking about, okay, well, here's what my A game is, that's great. But especially at Niko's level, you want to make your B game better than other people's A games. And that means knowing what days you can go for a hyper-aggressive play and what day you need to play it a little bit more passive, play within the framework that your team has like established, and make sure that you're not giving away any free rounds or free openings that you don't need to be. Niko just got hit for 30 damage, didn't he? Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, he got knife for 30 damage. Magis, keep playing too many Face-It Pugs. But they wanted to go for the long play, and actually, Eternal Fire was set up for the long play. Didn't see anything coming, immediately moved back, triple up on short, not thinking that Eternal Fire are likely to go for a delayed long control. Niko, oi, he's got to get at least one there. Oh, no. And then Wakadia, because Kixen's now worried about short, Wakadia is going to get the kill on a Kixen, just looking up. Oh, no. That's a disaster. Oh, disaster. Disaster. Yeah, I mean, look, Vu must hate Niko. He's making a video on Niko on the worst game he's had, probably, I assume, all year. Look, I actually began making this video on a different game, and Niko was just too good, and I'm like, I did a whole recording, and I was like, this is just not the right game for this. And the point is not that Niko sucks. Niko is unbelievably good. The point was supposed to be that people misunderstand, like, Niko is given a lot of resources, so when he has a bad game, it's not the same as one of his teammates having a bad game. But I feel like Niko didn't really do anything like hyper aggressive that required a lot of resources. It looked like Niko knew his aim just wasn't on point in this game and played within the system, and the system just wasn't good enough to win, and for good reason. I mean, you're playing Eternal Fire, an insane team. You're playing Eternal Fire. If Niko's having a really, really bad day and he's just like, I'm gonna have to be carried here, and you're playing Eternal Fire, you're going to really fucking struggle. It's going to be a tough time.